This is part 6 of Corrupt, a Chisaki X Reader fanfiction, or he prefers to go by Overhaul. This is chapter 9, He Intrudes. Let's begin. Following your little cam show, you hadn't heard from Chisaki in a few days. No new gifts either. Well, you weren't so greedy that you were particularly yearning for a new one. But it got you to wondering what happened to him. Maybe he was just really busy, or maybe he had gotten wrapped up in something dangerous. For some reason, that thought made your chest tight. Exams are coming up, you mumble to yourself, and I'm fucking screwed. He spent the last couple of days holed up at home studying and attending the odd few classes, but your attention was elsewhere. How could it not be, really? You now knew that you were a Yaki-san's boss leading love interest. Or something along those lines anyways. The camera was still on, of course, and you glanced over it ever so often, making sure to flash it a gentle smile. You were wary of what you did in front of it, though sometimes you got wrapped up in watching TV or something, and you nearly forgot. You couldn't forget. You couldn't allow him to see the things that even others hadn't borne witness to. You couldn't allow him to see the things that even others hadn't borne witness to. You wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Feeling exhausted, you shuffled off to the kitchen, pulling out some leftovers from last night's dinner. It was pretty late, but you'd been studying for a while. Perhaps you earned a break. No, but there was still so much material to cover. You let out a loud, unfaltering groan. You wondered if the camera picked up sound too. If so, then the reason Chisaki wasn't sending you gifts anymore was because he'd seen your ugly side and had completely lost interest. You sort of hoped that was the case. Just as you resolved to go back to your room and study some more, a faint knock could be heard. You shifted in place. Luna had mentioned she might be swinging by after her shift ended, but she hadn't really updated you in a while. Could it be? I know you're there, your name. Please, open up. The deep, husky voice sent pangs through your chest. It was ironic. Just as you'd been entertaining the thought that Chisaki had interest in you, he went and showed up at your door. Well, you didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe he stopped by to kill you. You moved nimbly across the carpeted floor, hesitating a bit before reaching for the doorknob. Without realizing it, you brushed your hair back and smoothed down your shirt. Moments later, you were staring into lidded amber eyes. Hello, you greeted, forcing a small smile. I wasn't expecting you. You looked around to make sure none of his attendants were with him. Chisaki-kun? I presume as much. May I come in? You nodded hastily, stepping aside to grant him entry. You offered to take his jacket for him, but he politely declined, popping it up on the coat rack on his own. He wasn't wearing his signature pointed mask this time. Just the black, surgical-looking one you'd met him in. Everyone in his group, or gang, wore that thing, so perhaps it was part of their costume, and heroes and cops would be able to pick them out on the street more easily with it on. You do a rather fine job of maintaining your home, he noted, eyes approving. That's a good quality. You can never be too free of filth, you know. Haha, I'm sure. Oh, I wasn't joking, though. You chuckled nonetheless, and Chisaki cocked his brow. He moved towards your couch, dusting it off with his gloved fingers before taking a seat. You fumbled in place for a moment, not really sure how far away from him to sit. Hesitantly, you took a seat by his side, careful not to give him ample leg room. He was staring back at you in silence. You coughed. Sorry, there was something you wanted to discuss? Was there something you wanted to discuss? No, my attendants did say I would be in touch, didn't they? Did they not? Well, that's true, but I was thinking. You clasped your hands together, looking up at him from underneath your lashes. Is there no other way for us to stay in contact, or at least plan for our meetings? I mean, they told me phone calls were dangerous and could be easily monitored, but it's not suitable like this, is it? I know you're a busy guy, so it goes without saying that I can't just waltz into your base, but I also may have things going on. You forced a laugh. Chisaki didn't look amused. I mean, if you had friends and stuff over, then you just showed up all of a sudden, I'm sure they'd be surprised, no? Chisaki hummed. Not to worry, I know what you're doing at all times. You mean in my apartment? Are you in your apartment at all times? It was a rhetorical question, you realized. The obvious answer was no. You went out places, school included, so you weren't just sitting around on your ass at home all the time. But he was speaking so assuredly, which could only mean that he had other ways of spying on you, even when you weren't within your apartment's walls. Be it one of his henchmen following you around or something else, you weren't sure. Just the thought made you sick. Isn't that a bit unfair, you tried? Voice trembling. I don't attempt to know everything that goes on in your life at all times. In the case for most people in some kind of a relationship, everyone should be entitled to some form of privacy. Chisaki didn't say anything for a few moments. You felt him shuffle closer to you. When you snapped your head back, he'd removed his mask and was staring at you with a stiff jaw. I'm trying to ensure your safety, he said dully. Do you perhaps have a problem with my methods? No, you answered hurriedly. I was just, I don't... How cute, Chisaki's lips curled up at the sides. He moved to further back into the cushion. Your indignant expression is amusing. I understand your premise, of course, but I'm involved in somewhat dangerous matters. I am taking all these precautions so that you don't get hurt. You wouldn't want to get hurt, would you? The last few words were dripping with hostility. You heard them for the threat they were. Slowly, you nodded your head. You'd been foolish to try and defy him. His power far outweighed your own. You said before that you did have a quirk. Chisaki went on, his expression turning to distaste. Would I be able to see it? Oh, you blinked. Sure, like I said, it's nothing special, though it sort of... You glanced towards the kitchen, asking that he excuse you for a moment. When you came back to the sofa, you were clutching a knife in your hand. You winced, dragging the blade towards your palm. Chisaki's eyes widened. It's just... Ow. The knife cut into your skin. A small wound. A bit of blood began to embed out of the fresh cut, and you didn't miss the way Chisaki's face contorted with disgust. With his aversion of germs, you suppose it made sense that he wouldn't like blood or other bodily fluids. Still, you weren't one to endure much pain, which is why you very quickly moved your other hand and let your fingers hover above the cut. A soft light began to glow from your fingertips. Slowly, the harsh lines of the cut began to dissolve and mend together. It took a little while for it to completely disappear, but once it had, you set aside the knife, wiped the blood away with the back of your hand, and let out a sigh. So, there you go, he smiled. A healing quirk. A very weak one, though, obviously. I would never try to become a hero or anything, since my abilities are subpar. Chisaki had been watching intently, never uttering a word. You noticed at your voice of the word hero, his amber eyes irresolutely flickered with disapproval. He was staring at the leftover droplets of blood staining your skin now. That quirk is your only imperfection, he rasped. If not for that, you would truly be flawless. You swallowed. He'd said that before, you recall. But before he'd found out what your quirk even was. He'd still scrunch up his nose in disgust upon learning that you had one. You found that strange. Usually people commend those who condemned those who didn't have a quirk. He smiled warily. Ah, Chisaki-kun, if you don't mind me asking, what exactly do you dislike about quirks? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. I was just curious, is all. What do I dislike about them? He retorted. You nodded vehemently, and he pressed his lips together in a tight line. Rather, what is there to like? Quirks are a plague upon humanity. The quirk epidemic has changed our world for the worse, and infected society with hero syndrome. All scum. A lot of them. The lot of them. He had the manic glint in his eyes now, though he was still able to keep his voice level for the most part. You didn't miss the look he shot you, as if your quirk had tainted you in some way, dirtied you. Rest assured, he drawled out, I will cleanse you of your impurities. What the fuck? What the actual fuck? Your jaw was clenched so hard that your teeth were grinding together. He was crazy, this much you realized. Some part of him was deranged, driven by a dark belief or aim that simply couldn't be you simply couldn't understand. And now he was in your apartment, sitting on your damn couch of all things. I will grab you a napkin to wipe the blood away. Chisaki had stood up suddenly making his way over towards the kitchen counter before you could protest. You watched as he pulled out a napkin from its box and moored it back to you. He crouched down before you on one knee, extended the hand out with the napkin. The position he'd taken almost made it look like he was proposing. The thought made you nauseous. Give me your hand, he said, but really it was more of an order. You bit down on your lip, hurrying to comply, but there was a moment's hesitation, but then Chisaki wrapped his gloved fingers around your wrist to tug your hand closer. He seemed content with himself for having eased into your touch once again. Humming, he began dabbing away at the specks of blood with the end of the napkin. We have to keep you clean, he mumbled to himself. Don't we? Your name? Yes. Really, what else could you say? He was scribbling away vigorously now, with a fiery glint in his amber eyes. It made your skin sting, but he didn't stop, not until there wasn't a hint of crimson liquor left. Liquid. My apologies. Wasn't a hint of crimson liquid left. The area on your hand felt hot and raw. Chisaki smiled, pleased with the results, and made his way over towards the trash can to dispose of the napkin. You were just staring down at your sweltering skin now. You felt afraid to even move. He sat back down beside you. By the way, he started, you put on quite a show for me a few days ago. You blinked, confused. A few moments later, your cheeks began to burn. Ah, yes, your little exhibition when you'd parred around in front of the camera wearing nothing but lingerie and the necklace he gifted you. So he had been watching. I was hoping you'd like it, you mumbled softly, feeling slightly ashamed that much wasn't quite a lie. You did want him to like it. You wanted him to feel as though you were falling for him, not questioning your motives. You wanted him to be kind to you, to not hurt you. Chisaki's eyes, though lidded, were glazed with longings. I did very much so. You'll do something like that again for me, won't you? When you nodded, his lips curled up slightly. Good girl. I'm afraid our meeting will have to be cut short on account of how busy I am. But I enjoyed seeing you. He pulled up off the couch one last time, leaning over to gently brush the back of his gloved knuckles on your cheek. You shuddered at the coolness of his touch. Chisaki looked both pleased and aroused. Goodbye, sweet, your name. We will see each other again soon. He smiled up at him, following him to the door to send him off. Chisaki placed the mask over his mouth again, giving you a small nod at the door closed behind him. You listened to the sound of his footsteps retreating, not moving an inch until you'd ascertained that he'd left. Then you collapsed to your knees. Your chest felt tight and heavy, and the point where his fingers had brushed by your cheek was burning. Chapter 10. Misery time? Misery? Never mind. Luna blinked at you. Girl, seriously, I know you've got some sort of secret admirer going on, but you've got to stop wearing all this fantasy shit around me. It's making me crazy jealous. Oh, sorry about that. You smiled sheepishly. You'd gone out for brunch with your friend, and you were wearing one of the new dresses Chisaki had purchased for you. It was sleek and fitting, expensive too, but that much was a given. Luna batted her... Goddamn, I'm having a struggle. Luna batted her long, thick lashes at you, dark eyes hooded. She was looking you over from the earrings hung so shamelessly down your lobes, past the glimmering necklace, and even your shoes, some fancy heels Chisaki had sent over to your house. You were pretty much the standard for a sugar baby. If only it were that simple of an arrangement, you thought loftily. You still haven't met him, she asked, or her. I don't know what they're into. You swallowed, remembering how the attendant had urged you not to speak a word. Right now you had no idea how truly private your little meetup with Luna was. There could be one of Chisaki's lackeys following you around. Or maybe your phone really was bugged. God, you had no idea anymore. Either way, you knew you had to keep silent. That was the best way to ensure your safety. I just get the gifts, you lied. They come every couple of days. The reason I can't trace where they're shipping from is because they have them sent through their workers. Each present comes with a small note. Luna furrowed her brows. I just don't know how you're okay with all this. I'm not okay with it. I get that you're getting really nice free stuff, but if it were me, I'd be creeped out beyond words. I am creeped out beyond words. I don't know, you shrugged off. There's not really much I can do about it. It's pretty harmless in any case. But they've got your address, and ugh, I don't know, I'm just worried about you, that's all. I understand. Thanks, Luna. I'll be fine, though. You forced your most convincing smile, and she merely huffed, forking her salad, while she was tending to her food. Your eyes hastily flicked to your surroundings. You currently didn't see one of Chisaki's henchmen, but, well, it's not as if they were going to be easy to spot. Never before had you donned such expensive garments. At first glance, people might have thought you had a lot of money to yourself, or that you were shallow. Fickle? Okay. You couldn't deny that they were beautiful, and you liked how they looked on you. But your reason for wearing them was far more convoluted. You just feared to imagine how Chisaki would react if you didn't use his gifts. You should pawn some of them off, Luna suggested in between bites. Pay off some of your student loans. Haha, I might. You wouldn't. That had been your exact first thought once you started amusing these gifts, but again, you didn't want to incur Chisaki's wrath. How's it going with Raikou, you asked, hoping to change the subject. Luna rolled her eyes, and that much was an answer in and of itself. Meh, she grumbled. Same old, he's an annoying bitch, always trying to piss me off. I don't think he tries to piss you off. Well, he fucking succeeds either way. You laughed softly, turning your attention back to your own food. You'd been so caught up in this whole mess, you'd almost grown to miss your friend's gossip, if you could really even call it that. Luna muttered something else about how Raikou had messed up her laundry, but your eyes had filtered towards a branch on a nearby tree hanging overhead your patio table. There was a single black crow staring down at you, rather pointedly. There had been a lot more of them these days, you noticed. Another day gone by, and no word from Chisaki. It was strange how you'd come to expect his extravagant gifts arriving at your door. You couldn't even begin to imagine what sort of hectic, erratic schedule he had, but you got the feeling it was better off if you didn't know. The way he'd just disappear for a few days after surprising you out of nowhere, like when he'd arrive at your apartment, was a tad disconcerting. It couldn't be that you missed him. No, surely you didn't miss him. You let out a weary sigh. You weren't really feeling up for studying tonight, but most of the day you had been spent lounging around and binging TV shows after you'd met up with Luna for brunch. It was fine to take a break, sure, but you'd been horribly unproductive and mentally cursed yourself for wasting so much time. Perhaps you'd already set sights on failing your classes. A cracker snapped in between your lips. You stared listlessly at the TV screen, though you weren't really paying much attention anymore. Maybe you'd head off to bed early tonight. Beside you, your phone began to vibrate. Incoming call. Luna. Unusual. You'd just spoken to her in person earlier, and she usually texted you in advance if she needed to speak over the phone. Scrunching up your brows, you picked up the phone and placed it against your ear. Hello? Your name. Luna hiccuped. Is now a bad time? You stiffened. Her voice was meek and strained. You could hear the low, repressed sobs coming from the other end. She was crying. What's wrong? You asked hurriedly. What happened? She drew in a hoarse, shaky breath. I'm probably just overreacting, but I don't know. I just don't know anymore. Raikou and I are always fighting over some stupid shit. Sometimes it's just teasing, and I'm okay with that. But lately, it feels like we've spent more than half the time being upset with each other. I love him, I really do. But I just don't know if it'll ever work out between the two of us. Please tell me what to do. Your name. You kept the phone pressed up against your cheek. She was struggling to keep her breaths even, but you could tell she was just shy of a total breakdown. Your friend was strong, but she didn't need to go through this alone. I'll come over right now, you breathed out. Don't worry, Luna, we'll figure this out. For now, just make yourself a cup of tea and try to mellow out a bit, okay? Don't try to do anything. Just sit down and curl up with a blanket. Okay. The remote skidded across the ground in your clumsy attempt to turn off the TV. Huffing, you walked up to the screen directly and pushed the power button. These were your two closest, most dear friends. You didn't want either of them to be hurting. You were out of your apartment in a flash, barely having collected your bag and flimsy coat to protect you from the frigid air. Luna's place wasn't too far from your own. To save time, you could probably catch a cab and... Your name. No sooner had you stepped out of the building, a voice was calling out to you. It sounded somewhat familiar. Then you noticed the hooded white figure with mask that prevented you from seeing their faces. There was quite a few of them, 4 to be exact. Chisaki's asides. What? The male speaking to you was the one with that you were familiar with. He was often around Chisaki, probably some sort of confident or right-hand man. Kuro, you recalled his name being. Yes, you asked worriedly, fingers gripping at your handbag. What is it? You know you could have at least given me a bit of notice before popping up like this. It kind of freaks me out. Kuro stepped closer, beckoning you forward with his wrist. Overhaul needs you. Needs me? He needed you. Whatever the hell that was supposed to mean. Really, what did he expect you to do? If a problem had come up, he was certainly far better equipped to deal with it than someone like you. Instinctively, you asked, is he hurt? But Kuro didn't reply. The other 3 were encircling you now. They formed some sort of ring to keep you from running off. Overhaul needs you. You gritted down on your teeth. If you can't even spare me the details, then I suppose it's really not as serious as you're making it out to be. If he wants to see me, please escort me there another time. Right now, my friend is the one who needs me. I think you've misunderstood. Kuro was now standing mere inches before you. If not for Chisaki, likely cautioned you not to be harmed. You were sure he would have gripped you by the hair and dragged you across the dirty pavement. You took a step back. Kuro extended out his hand. This wasn't me asking you your name. Overhaul told me to be gentle with you, but I'm afraid you're not making my job any easier. Please come along before things get ugly. You blinked away the tears forming in your eyes. You thought of Luna, who was sobbing in her room and waiting for you to arrive. Hastily, you reached for your phone. At least let me tell her that I can't. There's no time. We're going now. Kuro latched a hand across your wrist, pulling you forward with force you wouldn't have thought he possessed. The other lackeys kept close to your side in case you tried to break free. It was too late for struggling now in any case. You couldn't get away. You'd probably never be able to get away. Chisaki, okay. Chapter 11, Back Down. Chisaki needed you, apparently. You wondered what on earth he could possibly need you for, when he was a wealthy man of stature who controlled a looming force in the Yakizu. Never mind. If he'd just wanted to see you, he didn't have to be such a little brat about it. Seriously, was he playing hard to get? Mildly irritated, you bit down on your bottom lip. You supposed you weren't being kidnapped again. Your belongings had already been whisked away from you, as was supposed the norm around here, and you once again found yourself being taken down into the underground labyrinth that served as their headquarters. Kiro and his crew were pressed almost impossibly close to you as they guided you along. They still thought you would try to escape. The poor fools were clearly overestimating you. An unpleasant sensation was festering in your chest. Even though Chisaki was stalking you, you had some very clear issues. You didn't wish harm onto him. You hoped he hadn't been hurt, because you didn't want anyone to get hurt. Unfortunately, in this obscure, twisted situation, you doubted that would ever be the case. He's waiting inside for you, Kiro said, stepping off to allow you passage. You nodded hastily, brows still furrowed. Seriously, you didn't want him to be hurt, and walking into the room you found nothing. Your name? Chisaki greeted, sitting up from the sofa. He wasn't wearing his mask, probably since he'd been expecting you. It's nice to see you again, he said amicably. I hope Kiro and the rest didn't inconvenience you. You blinked slowly. Well, you'd expected as much. You kind of felt like a fool now. For a moment, you actually had been worried about him. Worried that he'd gotten tangled up in something nasty and been mutilated or paralyzed. But no, he was right there, practically licking his lips in delight, as if his favorite snack was sitting right in front of him. Is everything all right? Of course, Chisaki frowned, cocking his head to the side. Why wouldn't it be? Kuro-kun said you needed me for something. I needed to see you, yes. It had been a while. You wanted to smack him, but you were sure it'd be the last thing you'd do right now. Your closest friend was all alone when you were supposed to be her shoulder to cry on. Hell, Luna wasn't even it. There were a fuck ton of other responsibilities waiting back at home for you. You didn't even know when you'd be allowed to leave. Chisaki had been generous for the first time around, you realized this. With how weak and helpless you were, there was clearly nothing preventing him from imprisoning you here. It was a dark, terrifying thought, but somehow it didn't feel too far from the truth. I was worried, you gritted out, clenching your knuckles to keep from glaring at him. They made it sound like you'd gotten hurt. Chisaki half smiled. Your concern is appreciated, but unnecessary. I'm always very careful. But he paused, lifting his hand to press a gloved finger to the bangs of his short-cropped hair. Upon squinting, you realized he was hurt, though it was certainly nothing major. A small scratch at the top of his forehead. It was flush and angry pink. Now that I think about it, one of my previous meetings did not go so well. The clients were rather unruly. Well, I'm sure we'll come to a rational agreement sooner or later. You stared at him silently. There were many things you longed to know about the way he did business, but every scenario you imagined was nothing short of horrific. If he'd gotten hurt during a meeting, then surely some fighting had ensued. Just how grave it had been, you'd never know. I could heal it, you offered, flashing a small smile. It's not too big of a wound. I'm sure that even I could help a bit, if you'd allow me to, of course. As always, Chisaki looked disgusted by your mention of a quirk. It's fine, he dismissed. I could always bring it back to normal if I wanted to, but I think I'll keep it this way for now. A reminder, so I don't let my guard down in the future. Bring it back to normal? He didn't explain. Instead, he stepped closer to you, inhaling your scent before reaching out to touch you. Chisaki hesitated like always, but you thought he seemed a bit more comfortable than before. His fingers brushed by your temple before tucking a strand of hair behind your ear. A bit of how innocent the gesture was, you found yourself blushing. How beautiful you are, Chisaki mumbled, dragging his index finger from your cheek towards the curvature of your bottom lip. It lingered there for a moment. Cool latex parting your mouth ever so slightly. You were barely breathing now. Was your heart beating so rapidly out of fear or desire? Without even realizing it, your eyelids had fluttered to a close. You pressed up on the balls of your feet, lurking forward so that you could reach up to Chisaki's tall frame. His fingers reacted hurriedly. You heard the sound of him taking a step back. Your eyes snapped open. Well then, I think that's quite enough for today. Chisaki coughed into his arm. He looked conflicted and just that slightest bit embarrassed. Kiro is still waiting outside to escort you back to your room. I think you'll find we've decorated it to your liking. Okay, your cheeks were burning. Without even saying goodbye, you prided on your heel and practically ran out the door. Just as Chisaki said, Kurogiri had been standing by waiting for your discussion to end. You didn't pay him much notice, not even when he began speaking to you. Back then, had you actually been trying to kiss him, hoping that he would kiss you? You cast your head down, both mortified and confused beyond words. Miss, your name, Kiro frowned. What seems to be the problem? He escorted you to your room, whereupon you promptly shut the door behind you, turned off the lights and crawled into bed. A nap would have been ideal. Too bad Chisaki's henchman refused to fuck off. You pressed the covers closer to your chest. I'm sleepy. Could you please go away? I would, but it's time to eat. Also, you've been in bed for quite a while. If Overhaul finds out that you're feeling unwell, it won't be a pretty sight. I'm not feeling unwell, I'm just... Wait, why the heck am I trying to spare his feelings when I'm the one who's been taken here against my will? I need a computer, you declared, suddenly shouting upright in your bed. I know you guys love to take my phone as always. I know you guys love to take my phone and away and all, but I'm sure you get internet here, especially if Overhaul has work to do. Curie nodded patiently. Yes, we have computers here. Great, so can we? No. But you didn't even hear what No. You puffed out your cheeks, red-faced and indignant. If you at least had internet, you could go online and try to contact anyone. But then again, what'll happen if they find out you've tried to call for help? For the most part, Chisaki handled you carefully, as though you were made of porcelain. Hell, he still hesitated to even touch you, and when he did, it was like he was marveling in an undiscovered wonder of the world. But you'd never defied him, and all of his henchmen were very clear about what would happen if you did. God, you were scared. You didn't know what this man was capable of, or what it would take to push him over the edge. But I'm bored, you grumbled, and I want to browse the net for memes. Pretty please. Kiro faltered. Memes? What are... Never mind. Unless Overhaul authorities gives you the access to such a device, I can't make the decision on my own. So you've got no authority. Is that what you're saying? Under Overhaul's jurisdiction, very little. Your comment had been intended to irk him, but Kiron was apparently very good at taking your bullshit. It was unnerving knowing what kind of people you were dealing with. Aside from his familiar voice, he was just a hooded, masked figure to you. Suddenly, you had a thought. Can I see your face? Curie cricked his head to the side. Presumably, you didn't know because you couldn't fucking see. Looking in trigger? I'm curious, you went on, and I think it makes us feel less like strangers. The fact that you're the person I'm most familiar with around here other than Overhaul is really weird, considering I've never seen what you even look like. Don't get what the harm is. I would have to check with Overhaul if he allowed me to do such a thing. Wow, someone whipped. You hopped off the bed, striding up to the man in one fluid motion. Oh, wait. Wow, someone's whipped. You hopped off the bed and strided to the man in one fluid motion. He shifted, but showed no sign of backing away. You were already reaching over to remove his mask, but your chest pressed up against his own as you gripped at the cloth-like edge that tucked behind his neck. And just what exactly is going on here? Oh, fuck! Overhaul. Huron rasped, pulling away from you immediately. His mask had been loosened by your prying fingers and fell to the ground with a hollow thud. You were staring back at the silver-haired that tapped off into arrowheads and taut, defined jawline. He was quite reasonably attractive, but his expression was laden with fear. Your name? Chisaki addressed, gloved fingers twitching by his side. What were you just trying to do? You unknowingly took a step back. I was curious as to what he looked like, that's all. Sorry. I felt weird speaking to someone I've never seen their face. I see. You didn't know what exactly he slunk in. You didn't know when exactly he'd slunk in the doorway, almost like a cat he was, creeping up on you so quietly. He hadn't removed his mask this time, but you could see from the way his brow contorted he wasn't happy, like at all, just because I tried to see some other guy's face. Seriously? Well, as long as you aren't hurt, everything is fine. I just came by to check on you. Having regained his composure, Chisaki's eyes relaxed. He nodded briefly, turning back towards the door. Kiron, he beckoned, leave. Your name, B for now. The silver-haired male nodded hastily, picking up his mask and placing it back on. Chisaki was out the door as quickly as he showed up. You felt your stomach grumble. Looks like you missed your chance to ask for food. Out in the hallway, Chisaki was striding forward at a brisk pace. Kiron broke out into a light jog to keep up with him. Overhaul, he tried. I apologize for earlier. She surprised me by suddenly asking to see my Kiron. In an instant, Chisaki had stopped to glare back at his assistant. His pupils were constricted. Taut blood vessels showing in his white skewer. Kiron was more than familiar with this ruthless gaze. It had been quite a while since it had been directed towards him. I do not care if we've known each other for a long time, Chisaki growled, and reached down to begin removing one of his gloves. A warning. If I ever see you getting close to her again, I won't hesitate to destroy you. Heed my warning. Next time, I will not be as forgiving. Of course, Overhaul. Then good, he dismissed. Come with me to my office. I have things to discuss with you regarding that wretched League of Villains. Kiron nodded, swallowing down the lump that had formed in his throat. Obviously, give her credit. She's a great reader. I can't do another one of these today. I can feel my voice. I don't know if you can hear it yet, but I can feel it. It hurts. I need to stop. So, that's gonna be it for today. Yeah. Bye.